All right. So yeah, as I was saying, I really liked our CI/CD UX catch up a few weeks ago, and I think these sessions are really useful for general alignment between the product designers, well, on the CI/CD and beyond. And I would say, welcome, Holly. It would be really nice to hear, yeah, like how certain things that I placed on the agenda are being done in your section as well. Yeah. So I would suggest to go through the agenda that I put up for today's session and discuss a few questions over there. And if anyone has anything to add, please feel free. And so the first thing I wanted to kind of like announce and discuss and collect the feedback from you all is you probably have seen the changes to the UX design review sessions. So we kind of decided to split them recently up into the UX showcase and the design reviews. So the UX showcase session is going to be happening starting from November 22, and they're going to be happening bi-weekly. And there is schedule that I placed here in the agenda document as well. So you can see when each of the stage groups are participating and when are you scheduled to present. So the attendance for the UX showcases meetings going to be managers, stakeholders, and just everyone who wants to be there. As far as I understood, we won't be giving feedback to each other. It's just like a product designer showcases for awareness, like the research projects, the product design work, just to showcase what was done to the company on the design level. And however, there is another sessions that are being set up. That's going to be the design reviews, and that invite for CI/CD, everyone, you guys have already received. It's going to be starting from the next week on Thursdays, and these sessions are for us to present our work, UX work, research work, discuss processes, how we use them in the stage groups, and give and receive the critiques between our stage group. So it's like it's me and you guys, and in the future maybe everyone else who wants to join. It's basically we're going to be using this as a general check-in, kind of like to give each other help and advice and feedback on any question from, as we've been discussing with Dmitry, hey, I use this icon, do you have any other ideas, up to what kind of a process do you use to solve that problem? I'm curious, what do you think about these two changes? And about having the CI/CD design reviews, especially like weekly.
I have two questions about it, actually. The first one is, what level of presentation do you think will be expected for that? I was speaking with Alexis yesterday, and we were talking about how the design reviews previously were a little less formal. And so people felt that they could just bring whatever and present whatever. And it seems like this might be a little more formal considering the audience, but maybe not. So I'm just curious what everyone's thoughts are on that. That's the first question. And the second is, I had heard for the very first one, we were not going to invite leadership and the other stakeholders, just as kind of a trial run. Is that accurate?
Which sessions are you talking about? UX showcase or the CI?
The showcase, sorry.
Yeah. So about the showcases, there is a template for the presentation as optional suggestion, and it being split up into the 4 sections, like the business case, the goals, the customer problems, and then the actual solution. You're free to use whatever you want, but that one was just created to help you get up to speed. That's one. And I am not sure if the participants for the first session will be any different from any further. I would not expect that, because for the first session we'll have one stage group, and for the another one we will start the schedule, so it's going to be changing. So I would expect it to be the same.
Okay, thank you.
In your Holly, in your stage group, do you have the design reviews for your stage group already set up as well?
We have not officially set those up. So currently it's just Alexis and I on my team. Annabelle is also on the team, but she's phasing out now, moving over to Secure. So we've both been in kind of a catch-up stage where we've just been trying to kind of get on top of some things, and we've had a lot of changes too, in that we had 3 new project managers and now Shane is leaving. So we've been in a little bit of a state of chaos, not crazy chaos, but mild chaos. So we haven't officially set those up yet.
Mm-hmm. Mike, Juan, what do you think about having the design reviews talking to each other in the small group about the work?
I really like that. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that's probably a great way to get more in-depth feedback like about our work, because we know like how our work relates to what other people are doing in our continuous, like thinking about like the DevOps process. It's probably more fruitful when you get feedback from people who are like affected by your work, you know. So I think that makes sense. Yeah, I think it's a good change.
So if I understand correctly, the UX showcase is going to be a little bit more of a formal session, which is externally facing, while the CI/CD design review sessions are to be really informal and internally facing.
Yeah, exactly. And for the design reviews in our group stage, I like, you know, we can discuss work at any stage, where somebody is starting and hey, I need an advice, or where somebody is finishing and hey, this is what I designed, give me a feedback, you know, like I need to brainstorm some ideas. It's anything. And for that, we don't even have a template. It's just kind of a genuine, friendly environment for us to share our projects and get help and feedback, basically.
Right, like a show and tell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mike, what are your thoughts?
yeah, I mean, I think that's a super important thing, and I wish we have been doing more of that. I know it's like daunting to go in front of like a large audience, present your stuff, especially when it's not polished. So hopefully, like as we grow as a group and get more familiar with each other, we can be friendly and not feel, you know, like feel open to present that without the stress that comes along with that. Yeah. And then the other thing that I think is great about doing it amongst our team is kind of saying the same thing that Juan was saying, that a lot of those sessions previously, you had to provide so much context that by the time you were done presenting the context, there was almost no time to talk about the actual design. Now, obviously, you'll still need a little bit of context on this, but being that we're in related groups, hopefully we can, you know, spend less time providing context and more time actually talking about the design.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, I'm super happy to hear that, because this is what I was thinking as well. And I scheduled those sessions to be on Thursday, 1 hour every week. Open for a discussion, maybe too often, maybe too much, but I think that should be about right. And also, I think I wrote there somewhere here, suggestion, approximately we can have like 2 designers presenting. It's also not a rule. We will see how much we can do or in that hour, or maybe we want to make that shorter in the future. And in the beginning, I know it probably will be a bit like, you know, I'm not sure if I want to present. So if nobody will be assigning themselves up to 24 hours, I'll be kind of like asking, hey, you know, I think that case is interesting, you know, we can discuss that, because everyone can learn from you, or, you know, you could ask for feedback. So if I won't be seeing, like, I will actually make them, I already made the document with the agenda where people can subscribe themselves to the sessions. It's in the invite. So if no one will be like subscribing in the day before, I will be just saying, hey, you're the, well, not the victim, I'm joking. It's like, I really want a friendly environment for this session, seriously. So I hope it's gonna grow into this like fun, exchanging thought process in the future. I know that we have to grow into that, but this is the goal.
But it makes sense to always start such a session prepared in an early board, so that it becomes more of this like, you know, playful thing, instead of, you know, having a document prepared or the slides, or you know, that we get rid of any template kind of system that is going to be in there eventually, and instead, you know, have that free flowing back and forth getting in there.
So you mean moving even the agenda thing to the mural instead of the Google Docs to make it feel more creative?
Yeah, maybe that is a good idea.
Yeah, I like that. What does everyone else think? We can try that to start. I agree that mural feels more creative comparing to the slides or documents. Yeah. Okay. So I placed here a couple of links. You can see the schedule for the UX showcases. I will be reminding you guys when like your stage group is coming up. I'll be saying, hey, you know, like next week you should be presenting in that big scale. So let's think of something. And for the design reviews is really something that we should be taking care of ourselves of, and it's really informal and just for us to align. One of the things that I thought, like maybe you can place your thoughts afterwards. I'm not sure if you want to go into too much discussions. These kind of questions, like what kind of feedback do we want to get in these sessions? In what situations should you be asking for feedback? You know, how would we like to give to receive it? Etc. I think it's not very necessarily questions to discuss, because I think as we start, we will probably like fall into some pattern and we will learn eventually. But if anyone has any inputs on these questions that I placed here, feel free to add during or after the meeting, and we will just use that as an input for the sessions. Yeah. All right. Should we move on to another item in the agenda?
I have one remaining question.
Yeah.
The UX showcase, does that replace the group discussions?
The group conversations?
Group conversation thing.
No.
So it's a separate thing from that.
Yeah. UX showcases actually replaced the previous design review meetings, the one that Aaron was always asking to sign up for, and you've seen that meeting was removed from the agenda already and from your calendar invites.
Yeah.
But then in place, you have like two meetings, the UX showcases and then the design reviews for the group section. All right, awesome. The next topic actually that came more from Ian, and I feel a little bit bad that he's not in the session, and so that's up to us. We've been having a lot of the discussions around the jobs to be done experiences and how we are using them for the UX scorecards. And I wanted just to bring this topic and see if there is any discussion to be done around that. Do we want to like share, does anyone has any like, well, challenges with jobs to be done? Does anyone like writing them or creating them or transforming them into the UX scorecards? Do we have anything like positive to share about that? Like,
I actually have had discussions. I had a discussion with Becca. She lives here in Austin. In like working, we talked about these, and I think the conclusion that we arrived to is a job to be done here in GitLab. They mean something that it's not necessarily what it means in the outside world when you're talking about job to be done. You know, I think that's and that's right. That's totally fine. You know, but but I think it will be good for us to clarify exactly like what job to be done mean in the context of GitLab. Mostly because I think here they feel like user stories, and when you read literature about job to be done, like that you find online, they kind of like focus a lot on like the deep motivations of the user, you know, like that go beyond the like immediate need. And I think that might be confusing for newcomers. It's not confusing for me anymore. I understand it, but like it's like for like people who are just getting on board, and I think that could be confusing. And for anyone who's reading the handbook, like, and sees that terminology, I think it will be important to define what it means to us. You know, I don't know. That's a thought that I have about that.
Is it correct that like the way that you want to think about jobs to be done is that you would like to change that, or is it that the current concept of jobs to be done is you know completing the need we have for them? So like, do you agree with the current process, or do you think like, hey, we have still like a step to go so that we eventually align with the externally facing expectation of jobs to be done?
No, I think what we have right now is the correct thing for GitLab. I think jobs to be done, which is something that I have used in many other contexts, like jobs and stuff. It could be pretty vague, so I don't think it makes sense to kind of like align with that particular interpretation of the concept. I think it would be just better if if everyone understands like internally what it means, like what's the best way to write a job to be done. I think that like from a very tactical level, I think if we could have like documentation or like a page in the handbook where we explain how to write a job to be done, I think that could be pretty helpful for most people. Sorry about that.
Holly, how is that process going in your stage group? I'm curious. Like, have you heard any struggles on the jobs to be done topic?
No, again, we've been in kind of a strange state in my group. So it's been really interesting to watch how you all are handling some of these conversations, because we really haven't talked about it much. Again, we've just been kind of keeping our heads above water a little bit. But I will get there. It's just a lot of transition and change on our team for the past month or so.
What Ian actually was sharing, he was saying like that to him, jobs to be done is feeling like when he makes this job to be done for a UX scorecard, it feels like it's a huge one thing that later you can break into more jobs to be done. And this was his confusion. As far as I understood it and remember it, it's like that you could go much more deeper, that this first job to be done we created UX scorecard for is not really the job to be done yet. That you can go into much more like level of details later.
I think I should have explained something when I was giving my thoughts. I didn't explain like what's the larger concept of jobs to be done, and why I think it's kind of like different from what we do here internally. So like a very simple example, like if you think about like if you actually read the job to be done paper or like the Harvard business review paper on jobs to be done, like what he's talking about there is that like a job to be done for someone, like for instance like testing, right? Like someone who's doing testing, continuous integrated testing, they don't want to test things, that's not the job to be done. The job to be done is like, I don't want to have bugs, I don't want to have errors. Like testing should be like a second thought, like my actual job to be done is to like produce code that is bugless. My job to be done is not to write tests or create testing environments, or like that's not my job to be done. So I think that's where I find kind of like the digression, because like if I think about it, like the job to be done, like it's more I would say like more esoteric, but also like a little bit more like vague, and it tried to like be more inspirational, if you will. And I think what we do here is like we actually describe like very specific stories, on like things that we do against the product, So for me, they are user stories, and I'm okay with calling them job to be done. I just think that we should like clarify that.
Mike, you have anything to add?
Yes, but I guess let me qualify it first, because it's going to sound negative, but I don't mean it to be. So I especially love what Juan is saying of like getting to the deeper root of like, stop trying to do what someone's trying to do and get to someone, it's that whole, like, I can make you this great app, or I can just have the one button that solves the problem, right? Like at the end of the day, you want the one button that solves the problem if you can. So I love the process, and I think it's a super valuable thing. Where I've struggled with it a little bit is I think we need to match the maturity level of the particular feature to the effort. So my point is the negative part that I got out of jobs to be done was there was a lot of overhead. It took a lot of time. It absorbed a lot of resources. And I don't necessarily see the payoff of that. Whereas some other efforts that are along the same lines, particularly like feature flags, was just more directly like, here's where this experience was broken. Let's just go fix that and get that on track and get that done without the grandeur of the process. Was able to produce more results with the same amount of effort. It's not to discount the jobs to be done. I do think it's a valuable thing, and given infinite time and infinite resources, absolutely we do it. But that's not the world we live in. We live in GitLab that wants to produce lots of features very quickly. So that would be my only negative about it, is that it is time consuming, and you can achieve many of the same results with more direct methods.
So you would say that if the maturity of a feature or a group of features perhaps is lower, you also step in lower. You step how am I going to say? You step in lower in terms of hierarchy where the job to be done is located. So, for example, what Juan was saying is it's either I don't want to have bugs, which I would say is very up at the top, where I need to write tests, which is a step lower. But if the design maturity level of the feature on writing tests and test support is not yet at that lovable state, it makes more sense to step in at that level as to, hey, the user is motivated to write tests. Let's look at that job to be done versus the complete the job to be done that is I'm thinking Dutch here. There's a Dutch word in my mind which encompasses all. That was the word I was looking for. That encompasses much more than that.
Yeah, and that's where I think that Juan is hitting on a great point, because like when a feature is very unmature and it's early stages, it is very important to think about the end goal, right? Like, where is this thing going? To make sure you start off on the right path. I don't feel like that's what we were doing, to Juan's point. What we were doing is basically reevaluating experiences and doing it more at the actual level. Like, I'm trying to accomplish this thing in GitLab. And I guess my point is that if that is what we are doing that exercise on a very raw, rough feature produces nothing but obvious answers. And that's what I felt like I got out of my experience, was all I did was wrote down obvious things that I knew at the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
And that makes it a waste of time.
So you
not a waste of time, but it limits the return on the effort.
Yeah, I agree with Mike. It's like because we do it that way, like I almost feel that like what you were saying is that like the effort, like the input is too large and the outcome is too little, right? Like it's like you have to do like all these kind of like analysis of what's going on, like the feature is pretty rough, and then the outcome is like, oh yeah, well, the obvious thing is that we need to fix this small thing, but like it's not gonna move the needle a lot, right? Like it's
right. Yeah, and I had to produce a video, and it was a whole thing, right? Whereas I could have just opened up an issue that said, like, people want clear documentation. We knew the documentation was broken going in, and we knew the documentation was broken out. I could have just opened up an issue, said, let's fix the documentation.
It doesn't work.
Sorry. That's actually a very good point. So like, and how do you think we can avoid that? Like, how do you think we can make sure that we not think about the jobs to be done in a GitLab frame, like, but then like looking into the actual problem?
I'd say that it is kind of related to where we are stepping in with the this UX scorecards. You know, I would say we just passed the first generation of scorecards, which were marginally influenced by product management. And we're more there as a, you know, kind of evidence case for future jobs to be done. It's like, hey, we can provide value this way. Now let's take it to the next step, which would be the second generation of UX scorecards, where we can, you know, be a little bit more ambitious. But that requires more input from product management into those jobs to be done, which I think is yet to be done. At least when I talk, for example, about CI, I'm positively looking forward to the next effort in that sense, even though it will not be pushed forward by an OKR, I think. But you know, the value should be clear now to product management that, you know, this is a way for us to uncover problems, or you know, get a feature to a maturity or a lovable maturity state, so that, you know, we can do those things on a bigger scale with more value out of in the end of it for the next generation.
Yeah, and I think like every conversation seems to come back to, you know, more discussions with product managers about vision and strategy. And to me, this plays perfectly into that, right? This is if we are having the vision and strategy conversations, and then we are aligning the jobs to be done in our UX scorecards with those products, you know, vision categories, then it all plays together, it all works together, and it reinforces each other. As opposed to how it seemed to play out in the first one, where it was the vision and the features that were, at least in my area, the vision and the strategy items that were at the forefront were not what the jobs to be done was executed against. So I think that tighter coupling of let's talk about vision and strategy on things, and then see where the next job to be done should focus on, should align with that area.
Yeah, because I think the more we get that North Star approach into those, you know, scorecard efforts, those will have potentially a big return on investment versus just judging an existing experience and uncovering small problems with it.
Yeah,
that's how I'm looking at it.
Juan, what are you agreeing? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I do agree. I think I was kind of like thinking here a little bit of like all the things that have been said. Was thinking about what Mike was saying, and I think maybe in the future, like we might need to have like a mini version of the UX scorecard, something that doesn't need the video or anything, but still kind of like captures like, because I think what's valuable about the scorecard is that like it's analyzing the feature like in isolation, right? Like you're not thinking about the issues, you're thinking about the whole user flow end to end, right? Like it's kind of like the route that takes the user to accomplish something, right? But sometimes like you already know where's the issue, you just need to document like how that issue you just need to document how to reproduce the issue from like a user flow perspective, right? And I think sometimes just like recording the video and like taking the screenshots and like doing all the kind of like grading and doing all that stuff for like a small thing might be too much. So, but still, I see the value of just like documenting something in that fashion and like grading it and like kind of like saying like this is wrong and we should improve this, you know. So, and that kind of makes sense to me as we get more complex, that we have like the mini scorecard, you know, or like the you know, like, or like could be called something else, you know, but it's like a different way to evaluate and like go and like approach these things. And then like perhaps we just make it in such a way that like it's already kind of like box set in like size, so we know that like if you're gonna do a mini scorecard, then make sure that you just produce maximum 2 recommendations, something like that, you know. I don't know, I'm just trying to like brainstorm here, but like
Mm-hmm.
I
It seems like
think
you
that
are saying that we are putting like too much effort for a thing that could be like, well, easier accomplished, and like kind of like also it comes back to what Mike was saying, that it seems like we are kind of like doing a big process to document something that we already know without
Mhm.
going through all of the steps, right?
Yeah,
yeah.
I think
No, go ahead, Mike.
I think it's, it's using the right tool for the right job, right? There's a I don't know what a regular hammer is called, but it's a regular hammer and there's a sledgehammer, right? There's a time to use a regular hammer and there's time to use a sledgehammer. And I think if we try to use jobs to be done for certain situations, it will produce, it'll make the process harder. And if we use it for the right situations, it will produce the job, that the results that you needed to. I think maybe that's it. It's just a little bit of matching up what we're trying to accomplish with the tool we're using to accomplish it.
I know that I've had, like, part of the reason for, in this case, using the sledgehammer, if I call it correctly, the big one of the two, I would say is to have, to be a little bit more data driven and have evidence for the basically heuristic evaluation of a certain experience to discuss and get things prioritized from a UX context into the roadmap of product management. Because I've had conversations in the past with product management that are like, hey, these things are important. And product management basically said, like, yeah, sure, but like these other things are important as well. How are you gonna, motivate or, lay the foundation to say this thing is actually more important than the thing we actually scheduled? How did you deal with that, for example?
Well, I think that's where the process did shine, right? It sheds a light on stuff that can no longer be ignored. So if it's the kind of area that has not been getting the attention that it needs, or we just know it's something that needs to be focused on, it does a fantastic job of that, because there is, right? There's flows, there's videos, you can look at this X number of ways, and you can no longer ignore the information that is put in front of you, and it gets attached to an OKR, and it forces the situation to move forward. So that's when I think it is right? Like if it's the kind of thing that needs to be moved forward like that, time to pull out the big hammer and use it.
Yeah.
I think I just mistakenly used it on a small thing that didn't need it, right? So I just wore myself out swinging a bigger hammer than I needed.
To be honest, like, your story really, like it sounds really familiar. Like I think it's especially like if the heuristic experience map you've created is very similar towards the results you're actually going to get out, and there's not much deviation from it from like many of the users, then the problems you uncovered in the heuristic version of it, you already knew it, that it was going to be a problem, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, personally, to me, this is a very useful discussion. I think maybe we'll also come back to that when more of us are there, just to kind of like follow up. And like, I would encourage us to exchange these things, like see maybe we can, well, introduce some change later. But as you said, it's also interesting how the second ones will go. But yeah, I just wanted to see how this process felt for everyone else, because I was definitely hearing some concerns here and there, and maybe we should, think about how do we want to improve this in the future so it feels less artificial or so.
Good topic to be discussed in the.
Any like things to do here we should document, or?
I mean, to me, the only one would be maybe that point of matching that this isn't a tool that can solve all problems. This is a tool should be used in these cases, and maybe flesh out what those cases are. What makes, so both from a product side, because to me, where the process fell apart was in selection of jobs to be done. That's where it fell apart, because we just kind of chose things. And granted, none of us had really done this before, neither as product designers, at least here at GitLab, or the product management. So the selection process of what we were going to do the jobs to be done on was largely just random. You know, we kind of just suggested some things and it was like, yeah, work on that. There wasn't as much thought put into it. I think maybe if we tightened up the criteria for choosing a jobs to be done area of focus, we could improve the process.
Okay, that's a good point. I wrote it down. Yeah, maybe we can also highlight this in the UX weekly, or even, I don't know, like the design management or something like that. If someone has any thoughts, please add them here. I'll definitely come back to this topic on the next one to see how can we go further with that. But maybe we should also add this topic to the UX weekly or something like that. Another thing that I wanted to ask you guys about is about the prototyping tools. And I know that recently there was already like the survey that was going on. I'm not sure if every one of us have added that, but in the design leadership team, there are discussions like which tools do we want to purchase for the next year, because the budgets are being calculated. And the questions are also if we need to be all aligned to be using one prototyping tool. And I was curious to collect your thoughts here and to hear like what things are you using today, and do you think we all need to be aligned using the same tooling?
I can start first. I think that, you know, there's for 90% of the prototyping cases, like a click through prototype tool is enough. But I have used, like, for example, Framer Studio in the past, which has been deprecated and been replaced by Framer X, which I haven't really used for more detailed prototype where you were interested in very specific interactions and those kind of things. You know, the click through prototyping tools like InVision, like Figma, like Sketch, they have come a long way since. So I think we're even more fine with those since then. But my favorite tool in the past have always been Framer Studio, just because of the versatility of it. But it had a steeper learning curve because of its coding mechanisms. Figma is, I think, currently the best tool for the click through. And I know that Jeremy is putting us up together with Christy to potentially replace Sketch, etc., with that tool in the next fiscal year.
Yeah, there is a lot of discussions about Figma where it should replace Sketch, actually, indeed.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what are you guys thinking also on that?
I'm all for it. So I'll answer the prototyping question with, since we don't have a dedicated one here, I've just stopped doing clickable prototypes, which is a travesty. So Figma would be my choice to solve that problem. I much prefer having one tool, right? I don't like having to go between two tools. So being able to do my sketching and prototyping in one tool, Figma, would be fantastic. And I've used it in the past, and my favorite.
Okay.
I've also just kind of gotten lucky where haven't really had to articulate too much interaction stuff. Most of the stuff I've been working on, I've been able to accomplish it through just mock-ups and sketches and descriptions.
Gotcha. Yeah, but I think that would be, yeah, I don't know what about you, but like, yeah.
I can understand friction too. All right, I may need a prototype. Now I'm standing before the choice of, all right, which one am I going to use? Then I need to go into that and build it. While if there's like one preferred tool, then it makes the, takes away the choice friction basically.
Yeah, feels like a barrier to entry right now to me.
So Dimitri, you're saying that you would also prefer to have like one tool selected so we just can focus to use that and not being bothered with the choice. Is that what you're saying?
I think, yeah, I think that is preferable. Like, I think, you know, some flexibility should be allowed, and perhaps even encouraged, because I think sometimes you have an edge case where you still want to create a prototype, but the prototype tool that everybody uses is not enough, or it's not up to the task you have for it. Like in those cases, use something else, but then you have a really good case for it.
And then if you would be picking Figma as a prototyping tool, would you say that we are letting go Sketch because those are too similar, but Figma has a clickable thing on top?
I would much prefer that.
Yeah?
I'm fully on board with Figma, but I've been for the longest time.
Mike, you as well?
Yeah, no, when I, at the end of my last job, switched to Figma, I maintained Figma as like my personal thing. The only reason I went back to Sketch is because that's our preferred tool here. So.
Okay, because this was actually, this is the decision that's hanging out there right now, and I will then deliver this feedback from us, because this what.
Yeah, to me, the only argument for Sketch is they keep promising that they're going to add all this stuff that Figma already has, and maybe they will someday, and maybe they ultimately do win. But like, I don't think we should waste our time waiting for them. If they do become the superior tool, we can move back to them. Transitioning between Sketch and Figma, in my experience, is not that big of a deal. There's a few layering issues sometimes and some grouping weirdness, but it's not like you're ruining your files. They're solvable problems.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed. Okay, then I'll just say that because we kind of like promised to collect the feedback from everyone, and I think that's fair enough to say. We need to leave the room. One sec, Mike. Well, should we just drop off then? It's 10 minutes you were left. I'll move the other topics to the next session. Mike, I think we'll just let you go then. It's anyway time of the end of the meeting, or?
It's 10 minutes.
Yeah, or what do you
Okay, yeah, that's no problem. We can just move them out. It doesn't.
I don't know if you're gonna find the room right now. Anyway, don't want to take your time.
Okay. Enjoy your